Welcome to episode 3 of the Score Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Walker, founder and lead tutor at Walker Prep, which has been helping students achieve exceptional score gains on the ACT and SAT since 2014. Learn about the impressive results we've helped our students achieve and how we can help you. Visit us at walkertestprep.com. That's walkertestprep.com. Well, with over a decade of experience as a full-time independent test prep tutor, I've debunked more test prep myths than I can count. Yet some simply refuse to die. Today, I'm going to expose one of the most stubborn and misleading of these misconceptions, and that is the notion that you can, quote, game the ACT and SAT through a bogus set of supposed shortcuts that I call Vegas tactics. So, what exactly are Vegas tactics? The term Vegas tactics refers to the practice of relying on superficial traits of an answer choice, such as, for example, the containing strong language, to estimate the answer choice's probability of being correct. Such tactics are often promoted as heuristics, that is, shortcuts or rules of thumb designed to simplify complex problems. Sounds good, right? Well, unfortunately, this approach poses significant risks. Vegas tactics may offer the illusion of a clever shortcut, but in reality, they transform the ACT and SAT from tests of skill into games of chance. Remember, in Vegas, the house always wins. You may occasionally luck out with Vegas tactics on the SAT or ACT, but overall, you're more likely to see a decrease in your score. Vegas tactics stand in contrast to sound, proven methods that yield significant and stable score gains. Effective strategies include mastering a rigorous approach to reading that I call hyper-literal textual analysis, identifying question types, and applying tactics and rules specifically tailored to those question types. In other words, effective strategies engage the content of the actual exam and don't just look at superficial elements of the answer choices in terms of how they may or may not indicate a probability that that particular answer choice is correct or incorrect, or how they might fit a certain pattern that directly indicates which answer choice you should choose, without even engaging with the content of the question. All right, so let's get more specific here. Let's talk about the downside of playing the odds, of playing the percentages. First and foremost, this gives your entire approach to test prep and the test itself a faulty focus. It is the wrong paradigm. One glaring issue with Vegas tactics is that test takers waste time and mental energy focusing on supposed tells within the answer choices themselves. It's important to understand that this is more than just a momentary distraction. This really saps your concentration, your focus, and your energy. It shifts your entire mindset. It shifts your paradigm from skills-based problem solving to one more akin to a pool hustler or a card shark. This approach is fundamentally misguided, distorting your conception of the exam and diverting your focus from the actual task at hand, which is mastering the content of the exam and engaging with strategies like hyperliteral textual analysis. Hyperliteral textual analysis, you're still engaging with the exam itself, with the content of the question. So the first problem with playing the percentages, using these Vegas tactics is the faulty focus. Secondly, it leads to second guessing. So another issue with using Vegas tactics is that they frequently lead to second guessing. I can't count the number of times I've been reviewing a student's misses with the student. And the student, I'd say, oh, the correct answer is C. And they say, that was my first choice, right? They point out that they initially chose the correct answer, but then switched to a different answer, an incorrect answer. And of course, I always ask, well, what led you to make that decision? Why did you second guess yourself? And you get a lot of different types of answers to this question, but one that I often hear is something like this. Oh, well, I just felt that it was strongly worded. That answer that I initially chose had a strong word in it. And someone on the internet told me that strongly worded answers are always wrong or usually wrong. Okay, well, that is too bad. That's really too bad. It's a shame to identify the correct answer through sound techniques, through effective strategies, by engaging with the content of the test, the content of the question itself, only to discard that answer because you're paranoid that it's, quote, strong language or some other supposed tell, is a trap. This is superstition. This kind of superstition can be catastrophic for your score. Don't let it happen to you. Don't let your score become a casualty of Vegas tactics. All right, so I've been talking about Vegas tactics in general, sort of in the abstract. It's about relying on or paying attention to superficial elements of usually the answer choices themselves. And, the language is strongly worded, or some other characteristic of an answer choice or some pattern in the answer choices. But can we get more specific about what some of these Vegas tactics are? Well, there's hundreds of them probably, but yes, I'm going to discuss a few of the more common types that you tend to run across as a test prep tutor. Okay, so here we go. Number one, and these aren't necessarily, by the way, in order of popularity, but the first one I'm going to talk about is eliminating the first and last options, the first and last answer choices. This is the false idea that correct answers are most often to be found in the middle. Especially people say C, right? Ooh, C is usually the correct answer, or more often than the other ones. The fact of the matter is answer choice placement is random. Second Vegas tactic, shying away from the no change answer choice. Not all tests have this answer choice. The ACT features no change fairly often, however. And often students feel uncomfortable with this answer choice. They feel like, well, look, this is a test. Something in here must be incorrect. And so I don't want to choose no change. I'm sure that's a trap, right? That is not the case. No change can be correct and often is. So again, you can't avoid an answer choice or be biased in favor of an answer choice simply because of some aspect of the answer choice itself. You have to actually know what kind of question you're dealing with, know what you're being tested on, and engage with the content in the right way. All right, third type of Vegas tactic, the outlier. This is a very popular one. So this is the answer that looks different in some way from the other answer choices. Well, the answer that looks different isn't necessarily right or wrong. Being an outlier answer choice is not a reliable clue. Please don't waste your valuable time and mental energy focusing on that. That is not something you should be even noticing. Okay. Picking by length, number 4. Some people favor long answers for their supposed detail. Others prefer short answers, thinking, it's better to be concise, right? Well, both biases are flawed. What matters is whether the answer aligns with the passage. Of course, this would be in a reading context or an English context. So what matters is whether the answer aligns with the passage and is doing what the question says it needs to do, and whether you're applying sound strategies or following sound grammar and punctuation rules for whatever exam that you're working on. Because remember, different exams test different sets of punctuation rules. It's not enough, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but it's not enough to simply be familiar with punctuation rules in general or with English grammar conventions in general, because each test only tests a small subset of the potential punctuation rules and grammar rules that are out there. And it tests that same subset every exam over and over and over again. So it doesn't help you to know, 20 different punctuation rules when the test is only testing you on 7, and they present those 7 in a very particular way. Sometimes that is designed to mislead you and think that's not what you're actually being tested on. You may know 20 punctuation rules, but only 3 of those are the 7 you're being tested on. Well, in that case, then knowing the 20 punctuation rules isn't really helping you increase your score. So you need to be familiar with what is actually being tested on the actual exam and in what ways that is being tested. All right, number 5, getting back to the list of Vegas tactics. The, quote, "it's been a while," unquote, fallacy. So the "it's been a while" fallacy is the idea that if you haven't picked C for a while, answer choice C, it must be due for a turn, right? People start getting nervous. This happens. This happens all the time. Oh, why did you pick answer choice B? It's obviously answer choice C. I mean, this is an easy one. You don't usually miss easy ones, I say to my student. This is rare for you to miss such an easy question. It's clearly C. Why did you choose B? Oh, because, the last 4 answers were C, so I was afraid to choose C again. Again, that is not something that you should even be noticing. If you're paying attention, if you're in the middle of an exam, like the ACT or the SAT, and it's front of mind, how many times you've answered a particular answer choice in the last several questions, you are distracted. You are distracted from the task at hand. That is interfering with your ability to focus and concentrate on things that you really need to be focusing and concentrating on. It's not something that should ever enter your mind. As a test prep tutor, I'm pretty darn good at these exams, and it never occurs. And I will say that's an understatement, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty good at these tests. It would never occur to me to notice, how many times I've answered a particular letter in a row. That is just completely an irrelevant distraction. So, thinking this way wastes precious time and mental energy. Remember, the answer choices are randomized. The sequences are randomized. It doesn't matter. Don't pay attention to it. Vegas tactic number 6, avoiding the, quote, trick answer. That obvious answer might not be a trick after all, especially if you can't make sense of the only remaining alternative. So sometimes people don't like answers. I mean, this is pretty common, actually. Why didn't you choose that one? It's obviously correct. It's really obviously correct. Yeah, it was too obvious. I assumed that, since it was so obviously correct, it must have been a trap. Well, in what way? Could it have been a trap? I don't know. No particular way. I was just afraid of it because it was so obviously correct. Okay. And you will see this in some test prep books, or you'll hear this on YouTube. Oh, if it looks, obviously correct, don't choose it. It's a trap. Well, no, it isn't necessarily. Check to see if it's correct. If it's correct, it's actually correct. The fact that it's obviously correct is not a reason to avoid an answer choice. Don't be paranoid. Don't be superstitious. Number 7, Vegas tactic. Eliminating, this one I've already alluded to, eliminating, quote, extreme words. Oh boy, have I heard this one so many times. This supposed little trick, this little shortcut has really ruined a lot of scores. Don't get suckered by hucksters hawking test prep snake oil. Words such as always or never. Yeah, that's strong language. And guess what? They can be correct if warranted by the text. So you cannot assume that strong language is wrong. A lot of times people say this, it's strong language when it isn't even really that strong to begin with. But even when it is, it could be right. You have to check it against the text. Okay, so now the question arises. You can tell I'm very against this stuff. Are Vegas tactics ever okay? Are they always wrong 100% of the time? Or are there times when it's okay to use them? As you can probably guess, I'm hesitant to even discuss scenarios where Vegas tactics might be justified because I've seen the damage that they do, right? These tactics can have a damaging impact on test scores, and they often do have a damaging impact on test scores. And unfortunately, here's the thing. It's something I haven't talked about. People have a natural tendency to gravitate toward this type of thing because people have a natural tendency to gravitate toward anything that seems like an easy shortcut. That is human nature. We all do it. I mean, even me, not with respect to the exam, but of course in other ways. We're all susceptible to it's too good to be true, the easy way, right? So I am going to talk about some times where you might actually use some Vegas tactics, but it's important to keep in mind and understand, I am not endorsing their use in general, okay? The reason I talk about this at all is the ubiquity of Vegas tactics. Many test takers already rely on them. A lot of people who come to me for test prep have already convinced themselves that they're effective. Of course, these are people who have often been trying to get their score to a certain point for a very long time and have not been successful in doing so. And yet they've learned these Vegas tactics, and it can be really difficult to get them to give those up. It can be really difficult. You say to people, look, how long have you been trying to get to your target score? And you've been using these strategies, and have they got you to your target score? Nope. Well, then, maybe they're not effective, and maybe you should stop using them. And of course, that's logical and rational. But we're all not always logical and rational, are we? And sometimes we get used to doing something a certain way, and we get attached to doing something a certain way. And even though we know intellectually it's probably not a good idea, it can be hard to let go. And I've seen that happen more times than I could count in test prep. So again, I'm not excited about talking about times when you maybe should or could use Vegas tactics, because people will jump on that, right? People are quick to jump on any excuse to use a shortcut. And so here's why you should not in general rely on them as a general strategy. 1, overblown promises. Any benefits of Vegas tactics are often far less significant than their proponents claim. Well, these work so well. They probably don't, okay? Secondly, there's the limited probabilistic advantage. These tactics may not improve your chances of choosing the correct answer, and they could even reduce your chances of choosing the correct answer. Oh, I'm just going on off of probability here. Well, there may not be an advantage probabilistically to these tactics, and in fact, there could be a disadvantage. Okay, they could lower your probability. You have to keep this in mind. And as I've mentioned, they're potentially time-consuming. If you do resort to Vegas tactics, do not dwell on them. Don't make them the center of your focus. Be quick and decisive about it. Okay, so now let's talk about when the chips are down on the exam with the disclaimers. There's a word I was looking for. The disclaimers that I just gave you in mind. With these considerations in mind, let's take a look at some potential scenarios where the use of Vegas tactics might be justifiable as a last resort. I repeat, as a last resort. Number one, if you're running out of time. When the clock is against you and you don't have time to thoroughly consider each question, making a guess using a Vegas tactic could be better than a completely random guess. I mean, if you're in a really big hurry, if you've got 10 questions left in 1 minute, then you just need to randomly guess. Okay, don't run out of time and leave questions unanswered. You do not get penalized for wrong answers on the SAT or the ACT, so never leave anything blank. So if you're really, really short on time, you do just need to randomly guess. But if you have you're short on time, but not super short, if you have 10 seconds maybe to spend on a question, okay, then perhaps, you can use a Vegas tactic. It may not work, but it might be better than just a random guess. Okay. Number two situation that Vegas tactics might be appropriate: overwhelming complexity. If a question is just too hard for you, doing this question, you're like, you know what? This is well beyond my skill level. Okay, well, using a shortcut might be a better option than spending an excessive amount of time struggling fruitlessly to find the answer to that question. Again, it could be better than just a random guess, and it might give you a sense that you've actually done something better than a random guess. Sometimes it's demoralizing just to completely randomly guess. A Vegas tactic might not be better. It might not get you a better result, but it might feel better, right, using one. So if the problem is just way too hard for you, okay, maybe. Number three, stress overload. Test anxiety can significantly impair cognitive function. So in moments of really acute stress, a Vegas tactic might serve as a sort of mental life raft to keep you moving through the test. 4, mental exhaustion. Near the end of the exam, extreme mental fatigue can impact decision-making. This can and does happen. And if you realize you're in that place, if you realize you're not able to think clearly enough to make a rational choice because you're too tired at this point and your brain is just gone, all right, well, in that case, a Vegas tactic might be an appropriate fallback option. It probably can't hurt at that point, right? Like I said, I mean, they can lead to a lower probability, but I mean, if it's a choice between that and just randomly guessing or fruitlessly staring at that question for 30 seconds, wasting time, hey, a Vegas tactic might be a better option. And then 5th and finally, indecision. If you've eliminated the obvious wrong answers and you still can't decide, well, first try revisiting the question, because a lot of times when people are stuck between 2 answer choices, they've eliminated 2, but there are 2 left and they can't figure out which one is right and which one is wrong. A lot of times they're forgetting something about the question. And so always go back to the question and read it very carefully and make sure you're not overlooking anything in the question. A lot of times that will clear that up. And people just assume that they remember the details of the question and they know what they're actually looking for, when in fact, they're fuzzy on that. So first try that. And then also go back to, if this is a reading or English passage question, go back to the relevant part of the passage and make sure you haven't overlooked anything there, because it's the same deal. We may have read it very carefully at first, but then we went back to the answer choices and went back to the passage and looked at a couple different answer choices. Then maybe we looked at the question again. And by now, we kind of don't remember exactly what was even in the passage. We might think we do, but if you go back and read the relevant part of the passage very closely, something might pop out that you didn't notice before, you forgot about, that's relevant to getting yourself a tiebreaker, right? Oh, now I see that one's wrong, okay, because it misstates what the passage says a little bit. All right, but if you've done all of that and you're still completely stuck, you don't want to just sit there staring at those two answer choices for another 60 seconds. That is just going to be a waste of time. Beyond a certain point, you just need to make a decision. Of course, you can randomly guess, but using a Vegas tactic in that situation could be a better option than just a straight random guess, if for no other reason than maybe you'll feel better about doing that than just randomly guessing. The bottom line is to remember that Vegas tactics are a last resort, not an ace in the hole. At best, Vegas tactics are your Hail Mary. They are never your game plan. If you're using them regularly, you are selling yourself short by misunderstanding the test. It is not a game of chance. The ACT is not a game of chance. The SAT is not a game of chance. At least, you better not be playing it that way if you're hoping to win. Approaching the test as a game of chance sets you up for frustration and disappointment. Effective test preparation engages with the actual content and design of the test. On the SAT and ACT verbal sections, and that's what we've been talking about, but ACT science counts as well. In fact, math, this applies to math too. I just don't focus on math because I'm not a math tutor. But on the SAT and ACT, this means you have to develop your textual analysis skills and your understanding of specific grammar rules and punctuation rules, the subset of those rules that is tested. You have to learn the question types. You have to learn the strategies for those question types. And you have to learn certain styles or modes of reasoning that work well against those question types in the particular situations that those questions put you. Cultivating these abilities is crucial for reaching your highest score. Well, if you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like to help others discover the show. For even more in-depth answers to your test prep questions, new episodes of my subscribers-only Standardized Answers podcast come out every Friday at 6:30 a.m. ET on Substack and Spotify only. To submit your own test prep questions and suggest topics for future episodes, become a supporting subscriber. Supporting subscribers also get full access to Walker Prep's entire archive of ACT and SAT prep resources, including strategies, drills, and realistic practice questions with detailed answer explanations. It's an invaluable set of resources for involved parents, fellow test prep tutors, and motivated students. Become a supporting subscriber and start submitting questions to the Standardized Answers podcast by visiting walkertestprep.com/podcast. That's walkertestprep.com/podcast. Well, that is it for this episode of The Score. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with a new episode of Standardized Answers on Friday morning and the next episode of The Score on Monday. Until then, keep prepping smarter.